The gala sparkled around me, but I felt like a stranger inside my own body. Laughter, music, the clinking of champagne glasses, it all blurred into meaningless noise. My mind replayed that stoplight moment on a loop. James's steady gaze, his words, his touch. I tried to bury it, to smother the fire he had lit. But the more I fought, the more it consumed me. Across the room, I spotted him calm, collected, mingling with donors as though nothing had happened. He smiled politely, shook hands, and carried himself with the effortless charm of a man who never lost control. Yet, every time his eyes flicked toward me, even for a second, it felt like the entire room disappeared. A marriage in shadows. When I returned home later that night, Daniel was already in bed. His phone rested on the nightstand, buzzing with late-night emails. He barely stirred when I slipped beneath the covers. "Event go well?" he mumbled. "Yes," I whispered. Though my voice was hollow. He nodded once and drifted back into sleep, his back turned to me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, James's words echoing, "You deserve to be seen." For the first time in years, I realized how invisible I had become in my own marriage. The next encounter days passed, but the tension didn't fade. If anything, it deepened. Daniel invited James over for dinner that Friday, completely unaware of the undercurrent between us. I spent the day in a haze, cooking, setting the table, rehearsing my smiles. When James arrived, his presence filled the room instantly. He greeted Daniel with ease, handed me a bottle of wine, and brushed my hand just long enough for my pulse to betray me. Throughout the evening, I played my role as hostess, but every glance, every fleeting touch, felt like a secret written in fire. When Daniel stepped away to take a work call, as he always did, James's voice dropped low. "You haven't stopped thinking about it, have you?" I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. "You shouldn't say things like that here." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Then tell me to stop." But I could single quotes T. The breaking point. The weeks that followed were a war inside me. I told myself it was just a moment, just words, just a touch. But desire has a way of growing in silence. Every time Daniel forgot a date night, every time his eyes stayed glued to his phone, every time his kisses felt rushed, I remembered James. And then it happened. A rainy Thursday evening. Daniel was stuck at the office, another late night, another excuse. My car was still broken, and when James offered me a ride home after dropping something at our house for Daniel, I didn't resist. The storm outside blurred the world into streaks of grey. Inside the car, it was just us, the hum of the engine, the patter of rain, and the silence that burned hotter than words. At the stoplight, the same one where it had all begun, he turned to me again. His hand reached for mine, firm this time, leaving no question. "I can't pretend anymore," he said, his voice rougher than I'd ever heard. "I want you, Anna." The world held its breath. I should have pulled away. I should have thought of vows, of loyalty, of Daniel. But instead, I let my fingers tighten around his . And in that small act, I crossed a line I could never uncross. The consequence: it didn't happen all at once. We didn't fall into each other's arms that night. But the secret had been planted. And secrets grow like vines, twisting through everything you try to protect. Every shared glance became heavier. Every word became laced with meaning. And every time Daniel left me waiting another late night, another broken promise, I slipped further toward James. Until one night, it wasn't just a touch. It was a kiss. A kiss that shattered the last thread of resistance I'd held. A kiss that made me feel alive, seen, desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. And with it came betrayal. The twist: weeks later, I found out the truth. One evening, as I was cleaning the kitchen, Daniel's laptop buzzed with a message. Normally, I wouldn't have looked, but something drew me to it. Some gnawing instinct. It was from James. She's breaking. I told you she would. How much longer do you want me to keep this up? My heart stopped. Another message followed. You were right, she's lonelier than she admits. But I don't know how you want to play this when she finally crosses the line. The room spun around me. My hands shook as I scrolled further, my eyes devouring words I could barely process. James. Daniel. Together. It hadn't been an accident. It hadn't been fate. It had been a test. Daniel had asked James to get close to me, to tempt me, to see how far I would go. My husband, the man I'd been quietly aching for, had set the entire thing in motion. The aftermath. When Daniel came home that night, I confronted him. My voice broke, my hands trembled, but my anger burned like wildfire. How could you? I demanded. How could you use me like that? He didn't deny it. His face stayed calm, his tone cold. I needed to know. I needed to see if you were still the woman I married, or if I was just wasting my life working for us while you strayed. Tears blurred my vision. So you had him test me? Like some experiment? His jaw tightened. I trusted him. And I wanted to see the truth. The truth. I had been seen, but not in the way I craved. Not as a woman, not as a wife, not as someone worthy of love. I had been seen as a test, a calculation, a risk Daniel wanted to measure. And the worst part? I had failed. The ending that night. I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. Not with a husband who tested me. Not with a man who tempted me. Not with a marriage built on suspicion and silence. As I closed the door behind me, I realized the cruelest irony of all. At that stoplight, James had told me, "You deserve to be seen." And he was right. But being seen had cost me everything. End of part 3. The stoplight stretched longer than I remembered. Maybe it was only 90 seconds, maybe less. But in that moment, it felt eternal. James's gaze lingered, unflinching, steady in a way that made the air inside the car too heavy to breathe. Wanted to look away. I should have looked away. But something inside me, the part that had grown tired of being invisible in my own marriage, refused to break the connection. Finally, I found my voice, thin and uncertain. What? James leaned slightly against the wheel, his tone low, almost private. You don't even see it, do you? My pulse quickened. See what? His lips curved, but there was no humor in it. How much you're missed. I froze. The words hung in the space between us, dangerous and heavy. What are you talking about? I asked, though my voice betrayed me with its tremor. His eyes softened just a fraction. At the office, Daniel talks numbers, deadlines, clients. He doesn't talk about you. Not the way a man talks when he can't wait to go home. He doesn't look like a man who's in love. The light turned green, mercifully dragging us back into motion. But the damage was already done. His words lodged deep where I couldn't ignore them. I stared at the passing cars, the blur of shops and faces outside. You don't know our marriage. You're right, he said calmly. But I notice things. I notice him. And I notice you. The last part slipped out like a confession. My breath caught, my fingers tightening around the edge of my clutch. Silence stretched again, but it was no longer empty. It was electric, the air charged with everything unspoken. The shift. I tried to steady myself with small talk. How long have you known Daniel? 3 years, he answered, his voice steady. But some things you understand about a man. In the first month, Daniel's brilliant, ambitious. He'll give his best years to the firm. And that's a bad thing? James glanced at me, his expression unreadable. It depends who he's giving up those years for. I felt a sharp sting in my chest. He wasn't wrong. Daniel had been gone more nights than he was home. His attention always divided. His mind always elsewhere. I had learned to smile at empty dinners, to nod while he mumbled distracted answers. But hearing it spoken aloud by someone who wasn't supposed to see made the loneliness unbearable. You shouldn't say things like that, I whispered. Maybe, James said softly, but I don't regret saying it. The stoplight that changed everything, we reached another stoplight. The streets were quieter now, the city sliding into its evening hush. The car slowed, the turn signal clicking rhythmically. A reminder of time ticking forward even as my heart refused to. And then, without warning, he reached across the console, not roughly, not boldly, but with a slowness that gave me every chance to stop him. His fingers brushed mine, just lightly, resting there like a question. The world outside blurred. The only sound was the thud of my own heartbeat, too loud, too fast. I should have pulled my hand away. I should have reminded him I was married, that this was wrong. But instead, I froze, my breath trapped in my throat. Because the truth was, I felt something, not just the warmth of his touch, but the weight of his attention. The way he looked at me like I mattered. Like I was more than just someone waiting at home for a husband who never arrived on time. Anna, he said quietly, my name breaking from his lips like a secret. I turned to him, and in his eyes I saw no hesitation, no apology. Only certainty. Don't, I whispered, though I wasn't even sure if I meant it. He let go, slowly, respectfully, though the ghost of his touch remained on my skin. His voice was calm when he spoke again, but there was an edge beneath it. You deserve to be seen. The light changed. He drove on as though nothing had happened, but everything had changed. The internal worry sat rigid, my thoughts a storm. How had one moment, one touch unraveled me this way? Daniel's colleague, my husband's teammate, a man I barely knew. Yet, in the silence of that car, he had exposed truths I had buried deep. I thought of Daniel, his hurried kisses, his distracted nods, his eyes always glued to his phone. I had told myself it was enough, that love was sacrifice, that marriages weathered seasons of distance, that James's words, his gaze, his touch, they had cracked the illusion. When we finally pulled into the parking lot of the fundraiser, my hands were trembling. James parked smoothly, then turned to me. I'm not asking for anything, he said, his tone controlled but intense. I just couldn't keep pretending I didn't notice you. My throat tightened. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He leaned back, his composure settling over him again, like a mask. I'll walk you in. At the door, the glittering lights of the event spilled across the pavement as we approached. Guests in gowns and tuxedos mingled, laughter floating through the evening air. To them, I was just another woman arriving at a charity gala. They didn't see the storm inside me. James opened the door for me again, his hand brushing the small of my back as I stepped out. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a shiver down my spine. Inside I smiled, greeted people, played my role. But every time I caught sight of James across the room, his dark suit, his steady presence, it was like the stoplight moment replayed itself in my mind. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this wasn't the end of it. Because once a line is crossed even just a little, you can never go back to the same place you were before. To be continued. I never imagined that something as simple as a ride home could leave such a deep mark on me. Yet that evening, Sitting in the passenger seat of my husband's colleague's car, I realized how quickly an ordinary moment can twist into something. You never forget. It started as an ordinary Tuesday. My husband, Daniel, had left early for work, rushing out with his tie half done, coffee barely sipped, and his phone already pressed to his ear. That was his life, now always running. Always. Answering to someone else. We had grown used to it, though I couldn't help feeling that we were slowly slipping into two different worlds. By the time I got ready to leave for an afternoon charity event downtown, I realized my car had decided to betray me again. The engine refused to start, just coughing and dying every time I tried. I sat there for a long minute in the driveway, frustrated and a little helpless. Daniel had promised to call the mechanic days ago, but work always came first. So I called him. He picked up on the third ring, his voice rushed and distracted. "Babe, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?" "Daniel, my car won't start." "Again," I said, trying to keep calm. "I have to get downtown, remember? The fundraiser." There was a pause, muffled voices in the background, and then his sigh. Okay. Listen, James is heading that way. He can pick you up. I'll text him now, James?" I repeated, the name sitting strangely on my tongue. "Yes, James Miller. You've met him, tall, dark hair, works in finance. He's on my team. It's fine. He's a good guy. I'll let him know you're waiting." And just like that, the decision was made. Daniel hung up before I could protest. I remembered James vaguely. He'd been to our house once, months ago, for a small dinner gathering. He had sat across from me, polite but reserved, the kind of man who seemed to be listening to everything but revealing nothing. His eyes, though those had stood out, dark, sharp, observant, as though he saw far more than he let on. I didn't have long to dwell on the memory, because within 20 minutes a sleek black car pulled into my driveway. I checked my reflection quickly in the hallway mirror, hair tidy, dress in place, though my nerves fluttered at the thought of spending time alone with one of Daniel's colleagues. James stepped out of the car to greet me. He was taller than I remembered, his suit crisp, his movements smooth. He gave a small nod, almost formal. "Mrs. Carter." I smiled, though his formality felt odd. "You can call me Anna," I said. His lips curved just slightly, not quite a smile but close. "Anna, ready to go?" I locked the house and followed him to the car. Inside, the leather smelled faintly of cedar and something darker. Something that seemed distinctly his. He held the door open until I settled in, a small courtesy that felt strangely intimate. The drive began in silence, the low hum of the engine filling the space between us. I kept my eyes on the road, but I could feel his presence composed, steady, as though he had nowhere else to be. Finally, he broke the silence. "Daniel said your car's been giving you trouble." I let out a small laugh. "That's an understatement. It's been threatening to die for weeks now. I guess today it finally won." "You should let me take a look sometime," he said casually. The offer surprised me. "You know about cars?" "One of my hobbies," he admitted. "Numbers by day, engines by night." That pulled a smile out of me. I hadn't expected him to share something personal, but it eased the stiffness. "Well, maybe you'll succeed where Daniel hasn't. He keeps promising to call the mechanic, but work always wins." James glanced at me then, just briefly, but his eyes seemed to hold something more than politeness. "Daniel works too much. Everyone at the office sees it." His tone wasn't judgmental, more like a quiet statement of fact. Still, it made me shift uncomfortably. "Yes, well, that's his nature." The silence returned, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was charged, humming with unspoken words. We passed through the busy streets, the late afternoon sun slanting gold across the windshield. My phone buzzed once with a message from Daniel. "Thanks for letting James drive you. He'll take good care of you." Take good care of you. I stared at the words longer than I should have, wondering what exactly Daniel thought that meant. James cleared his throat softly. "You look thoughtful." I blinked and tucked my phone away. "Just a text from Daniel." He nodded but didn't press. Instead, his gaze lingered for a second before returning to the road. The fundraiser was still 20 minutes away, and I realized we hadn't even hit the highway yet. Something about the pace of his driving struck me unhurried, deliberate, as though he was stretching out the moments. I tried to make small talk. "So, how long have you been working with Daniel?" 3 years, he said. "He's focused, determined. Not many people can keep up with him." "And you?" I asked before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked toward me again, and this time there was a faint curve of amusement at his lips. "I keep up when I choose to." The answer left me oddly unsettled. I turned toward the window, but my reflection in the glass betrayed me, cheeks flushed, eyes too bright. Why did his words feel like more than what they were? When we finally approached the first long stoplight on Main Street, the car rolled to a smooth halt. The world outside slowed, pedestrians crossing, a man on a bicycle weaving between cars, the rhythmic click of the turn signal. And then I felt it. His gaze turned my head, and for the first time since we'd left, James wasn't pretending to focus only on the road. His eyes were on me, direct, unwavering, as though he was seeing me in a way I hadn't been seen in a very long time. My breath caught. Something inside me shifted, a dangerous awareness threading through the quiet. This wasn't just a ride anymore. This was something else, something neither of us had planned, but both of us could feel. And in that fragile, suspended moment at the stoplight, I knew the night was going to change me in ways I couldn't yet understand. To be continued.